I am Eleanor, and welcome to this week's edition of the Intuition Lab. This week's edition was a lot of fun for me to brainstorm because I have been in this situation many times, as I'm sure you have, and it was always painful to me to realize that my intuition it seemed to not show up for me in the way I needed it to. So, without further ado, this week I'm talking about WTF was that, or how to recover when the unexpected happens and you think your intuition has completely failed you. Well, first and foremost, I would say it hasn't. Even if you feel that you've been blindsided, had the rug pulled out from under you, you think you're solid in your job or your relationship or your friendship, and it turns out that that was not the case. Like someone lets you down, someone betrays you, you end up getting hurt one way or another. And you think, well, I'm fairly intuitive, or maybe you're not, but why didn't I get a warning about this? So let's talk about it. First, why didn't you see it coming? Well, the first reason is that sometimes, as hard as it is in life, the upheaval was needed, that you were so out of alignment for your true path in life that, you know, something radical had to happen to move you back to where you're supposed to be, or at least clear out the false structures in your life, especially if I've seen this many times in relationships where you think things are solid and it ends out that person was not honest with you, they were running around on you, they fundamentally lied about something. You probably got really comfortable, and your life path is not suited for any of us to be built on half truths or outright lies. So sometimes the shakeup was needed. The next thing that can be really hard to stomach, so you might throw something at the screen, is that the signs were there and you chose not to see them. And I am so guilty of this, that I see the signs, but you explain them away. I've done this. You explain away the red flags because your ego or your heart or your pride just wants what it wants, be it a thing, a person, a situation. You want it. No one's going to tell you no. And anything that seems contrary to that, anything that's a warning sign, you either ignore or think you can fix. And I am guilty of that. So take it from me. Don't do that. Third, the signs were there, but you couldn't see them. And this is usually there in the case of having an undeveloped intuition, sort of like being in a place where the signs are in a language you don't read or understand. They're there, but you're not seeing them. Or you're somehow overcome, like you're overwrought, you're stressed out, you're ill, so that normally you may see the signs, but because you are so physically or emotionally hobbled at the time, you cannot see them. And like I said before, maybe it means that you just have not worked on your intuition enough, or you haven't let the messages come through. That happens, and the remedy is to build your intuitive muscle. Next, this happened because you were meant to learn something, which involves elements of the first three things I talked about and more. Usually, what you're meant to learn is something about yourself, like the need for self reliance, greater self trust, valuing yourself, or releasing an identity. And again, here, you might not like this, but for many of us, we hold on to some sort of victim mentality, or some sort of I always or this never, and it doesn't serve you. And I speak as someone who dealt with a great deal of childhood trauma and have had other just really painful things happen to me in life, as have most of us, right? And hopefully most of you haven't had the childhood trauma, but um, you were meant to learn something. Especially for me, I had to learn to have greater self-trust and to value myself and to sort of provide the love to myself that I felt I didn't get growing up. And I've since learned that. And not outsourcing my happiness and emotional security to others. And, I could easily have chosen to say, well, I can never have happy relationships because of what happened, when I was under the age of 16, right? But I'm not going to do that. And every time I've fallen into that pattern, something has happened to wake me up. So when you're blindsided and you feel that your intuition has failed you, look at what you are meant to learn from this. It doesn't absolve other people of hurting you or being unkind or untruthful or betraying you. But in most cases, it takes two or more to tango. So look at what you are meant to learn in this situation. And finally, this is probably the hardest one to hear. Sometimes it's a part of our life path. It just happens. We cannot know everything 100%. And I really challenge people, especially other intuitives who say, I am never wrong. The only person who is never wrong is God, source, universe, whatever you call the great collective intelligence that governs all existence. That is 100%. We as humans are fallible. We can be highly accurate, but there's always that little sliver of the unexpected out there. And it's hard. It's hard to hear that sometimes these things are just a part of our life path. I will also include this on the life path. Elements of what happened through being blindsided can have resonance from past life issues, like an issue that was not fully addressed in previous incarnation. For some reason, it is coming out now. And also, if you are in somewhat of a weakened state due to heartbreak, stress, pain, addiction, anything that pulls you out of your own energy and makes you more susceptible to other people's energy, you can start absorbing, you start absorbing their their vibration, their energy, their energy signature. And sometimes it draws things to you that normally aren't yours. But that's also hard to hear, right? Because then you think, how could I make myself vulnerable? Sometimes we're meant to learn to bolster our boundaries and not let the craziness of other people. And I know it's easier said than done, especially if you are in an intimate relationship with someone who is experiencing mental health issues or has issues with addiction, or even someone who's chronically ill, because it can be draining to you unless you keep your boundaries very high. So now that it happened, and there are reasons for why it happened, as we discussed, where was your intuition in all of this? Did it completely go missing? What happened? So there are a few reasons why, you feel like maybe your intuition has failed. And I would say it has not failed you. It is either not being used, i.e., you are not in connection with that part of yourself and you need to develop it, or you are purposely denying it. So, you can't see what isn't in front of you in some way, right? Maybe you just weren't using your intuition, you weren't tuned in at that point. And for me, um, I wouldn't say that I didn't use it. It was more a case of the second example of where your intuition may have gone missing is that you ignored it. And why do you ignore it? Either you doubt it, you don't trust it, it's shouting at you, but you've plugged your ears. That's what I've been guilty of more often than not, right? Um, just not trusting it, or maybe it was whispering at you and for a long time, and you kept ignoring it until it ramped up and said, okay, you're really not listening. You're not listening to the whispers or the shouting. So I am just going to cause havoc in your life. So ignoring your intuition will also bring you to great unhappiness. Your intuition is always there, whether or not you acknowledge it. The key is to just build your intuitive muscle. Check in. Look at one of my previous videos or listen to an episode about validating your hunches. That will help you if you are, especially if you're a very data-driven person and you need proof and you want to, go out in the field and make observations. In that, I talk about how you can do just that and start collating your own intuitively generated data to help you, bridge the gap between your hunches and what materializes in your life. So, you didn't see it coming. We talked about that. You don't know why you didn't hear your intuition. We talked about that. Now, here's what I think is the most important part: how to get back on track. It's not to say that you will never have an intuitive fail again, right? But I think you can greatly lessen your chances of it and not have your entire life pulled out from under you, because I believe that causes real physical pain and physical damage. I heard something on the radio a couple of years ago, probably more than a couple of years ago, about how heartbreak can actually cause damage to your heart that you can heal from. And we all have stories about people who've experienced great trauma and then were affected physically and definitely mentally and emotionally some way. And some people never recover, but I believe we can. But, if you can prevent this from happening, by all means do. And I say this as much for you as I do for me. So, how do you get back on track? First, you need to face the new reality, whatever it is. Maybe someone has gone from your life, maybe someone has come back into it. Maybe you have lost a much loved job or friend or opportunity. Whatever it is, you have to face the facts. And I know that many of us, myself included, would rather live in our head and maybe try to romanticize it. But in the moment and in the aftermath, the first thing to do is to face the new reality. Second thing to do is to face your hurt. Don't pretend that it didn't hurt if it did. You're allowed to be angry. You're allowed to cry and scream. I would say definitely emotionally regulate yourself, because you don't want to act out while you're in the throes of this great hurt and cause yourself more difficulty than you already have. But you need to face it. You need to acknowledge it. I'm not saying to let it take you over, but when it is safe for you to do that, you have to do that, because you will literally make yourself sick. And it will be difficult for you to really hear your intuition after that. So, what's the third thing you should do to get back on track? Take time to react if possible, or at least take a breather before you do anything. Sometimes you have to act really quickly and in the moment. And if you have to, find a way to even physically remove yourself or go in a quiet corner and just breathe. Make sure that you're back in your own energy. It might be a very hurt or a very angry energy, but you need to just take time to react and figure out what your initial response needs to be, just so that you don't knee jerk do something. Either, what is it? Fight or flight, freeze or fawn. All of these can be destructive if you are doing them when they are not warranted. Next, tune into your intuition purposely. So get back into your energetic five state before you do this step. And if you don't know what the energetic five state is, um, look at one of my previous episodes, and I will put a link in the description to it, because I think it's really valuable. It helps you to ground and center yourself so that you're in your own energy. Once you've done that, I want you to tune into your intuition with purpose and ask yourself the what and the why. So you know what happened, but you can also ask, is there anything else that has happened around this that I need to know about? Why has this happened? If you are okay with this, ask, what was my part in it? Sometimes we had no role in it except to be the unfortunate person in the way of someone else acting out, destroying themselves, being dysregulated, or just being plain evil. I'll come out and say it. Sometimes things happen and people are just agents of evil, whether or not they know it. But tune into your intuition purposely and ask yourself why. And then really hear the results and process them, because you may get some stuff, some feedback, some information from your higher self that either doesn't seem logical or seems hurtful. and it'll be delivered in a kind way. That's how you know if it's not your anxiety or your fear. It will be tough stuff delivered kindly. I mean, for me, even today, before this episode, I was beating myself up over something I have done years ago that sort of put me in a difficult position now. And my intuition told me kindly, yeah, you messed up. You really made a hash of it then, but you're getting yourself out of it. And here's how we'll help you do it, you know? So here are the results and process them. Like you might want to journal on it. You might want to like do some research, further reflect on it. And sometimes you will have feelings around what you get from your intuition. So process that. And then check in with your immediate needs. Now, I love living in my head. I love connecting with source all day long, right? But we live in the physical plane. So check in with what your immediate needs are and what your boundaries have to be. When we are blindsided, it is often the result of a huge boundary violation, a huge breach of trust. And sometimes you need to redraw your boundaries. Sometimes you need to get the heck out of Dodge. Sometimes you need to cut people off, just cut them right out. Sometimes you need to tell people, I cannot talk to you right now. I will come back. Or we have a lot to discuss, but I cannot do this right now. And if you have the ability to go stay at a friend's house or something, or go to another room, go sleep in another room, or maybe work from home for a few days if that's the case, whatever it is. And if you can't get a different shift, whatever, but you need to check in with what you need right now and what your boundaries are. Because sometimes we spend a lot of our energy focusing on the person or the situation that hurt us as opposed to what we need right now. Instead of wondering about why they did what they did or what happened in the aftermath of what happened, your focus needs to be what your immediate needs are and what your boundaries have to be for you to make your best choices. Um, yeah, also, this is sort of like a half step, which is make the needed repairs to yourself, to your heart. Do you need to see a therapist? Do you need to just take better care of yourself temporarily? Do you need to go have a sweetened drink or something that calms me down? And not the best thing, but sometimes you just need it. And within limits, what do you need to do to repair the damage on your own? And start doing that. Just start doing that first and foremost. Look after you. Then plot your next best step. And I say this after all of these other things happen because if you've been destabilized, if you're hurt, you're probably not thinking clearly. It's going to be really hard for you to make the best decision for yourself in that moment. So, after you've faced the reality and your hurts and reacted and checked in with your intuition about what you need to do right now and some of the what and why around it, and you're taking care of yourself, then start to plot your next best step. you know Watch my intuitive decision making episode. See what new avenues are open to you. Address what's been closed, but you want to take a rational look about what your options now are. And don't give in to hopelessness. There is almost always something you can do. And if you think there's nothing you can do, reach out to me and together we can come up with at least one option for you. And finally, build your intuition through daily practice so that you minimize the hurt, you minimize the blindsiding so that you can read the signs, so that you can accurately assess what's going on around you. I think it's our intuition. Not only does it come from outside of us, right, but it comes from within us, not just on a soul level, but on a basic survival level. Like what do we need to do to have a safe, good, happy life? That's part of our intuition. So build it through practice because you deserve to have that. And finally, know that things happen and sometimes we can't control them. And sometimes you think you've dealt with something, and a few years later, or weeks later, it comes back. And don't think it's because you haven't grown or you haven't applied your intuition or heard it. It's because I think events in life and our soul's growth happens in spirals, right? So someone described it to me as like going up a spiral staircase, like you are still looking down at the same view at the bottom, but you have a higher perspective and eventually you get to your destination. But if you have more to learn or release around something, you can always ask, and that's part of the spiraling of growth, the up spiral, is that you might have the same lesson to learn, but it will be presented to you in a less harsh, more loving way. You won't be blindsided by it. You will read the signs. You will know how to prepare or evade it altogether. And I think I'm going to do an episode about soul growth and the spiraling, the upward spiral, right? Consequently, you know that you are not listening if the opposite happens and you feel like it's coming back and it's worse. And it's not to lay blame, but one thing about surviving on planet Earth is that you have to read the signs and know which way to go. And above all, keep going. Do not let someone else's misdeeds devastate you. It's not a zero-sum game, but I've always believed that you let the people who hurt you, the situations that ground you down, win. If you just give up, you are worth it. Bet on yourself and please keep going. So thank you again for listening. If you would like more of this and if you would like support around dealing with being blindsided and having to make new decisions for your life based on that, I invite you to sign up for my free Pathfinders community that is launching this September, so this month. And details will be in the show notes, but it is going to be a nurturing, safe, respectful environment where you can come to flex your intuitive muscle, to make decisions for your life in a space where none of us have a vested interest in dissuading you from doing what's best for you, and in a space where I will curate it ruthlessly to make sure that we are truthful and honest with each other, but we are kind and we want each other to succeed. So until next week, I am sending you so much love and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.